I'm standing at the boarding terminal of the Caribbean Voyager, watching families and couples stream past me with their luggage, and all I can think about is the look on my granddaughter Jessica's face when she said those words. Stay where you belong, Grandma. Nobody wants to see an old woman trying to relive her youth. She actually said that to me. In my own living room, while I was serving her the lasagna I'd spent 3 hours making from scratch because it was her favorite. I'm 72 years old, and I've just done something I never thought I'd do. I booked a 2-week Mediterranean cruise. By myself. Without asking permission from anyone. And the shocked silence on the other end of the phone when I called my daughter Rebecca to tell her I wouldn't be available to babysit for the next 14 days? That silence was worth every penny of the $3,500 this trip cost me. But let me back up. Because this story doesn't start with me standing here at the dock, feeling the salt air on my face and clutching my boarding pass like it's a winning lottery ticket. This story starts about 5 years ago, when my husband Martin died and everything in my life changed. Martin and I had been married for 48 years. We'd raised 3 children together, weathered financial storms, celebrated grandchildren being born, and planned our retirement down to the last detail. We were going to travel. We were going to see all the places we'd only read about in magazines. We had a list taped to our refrigerator: Paris, Rome, Athens, Barcelona, the Greek islands. Martin used to joke that we'd need to live to be 150 to see everything on our list. He didn't make it to 70. A heart attack took him on a Tuesday morning, while he was reading the newspaper at the kitchen table. One moment he was complaining about the state of local politics, and the next moment he was gone. Just like that. 48 years together, ended in the time it takes to fold a newspaper. The grief nearly destroyed me. For months I couldn't function. Rebecca moved in with me for a few weeks, and my son David called every day. My youngest, Thomas, flew in from Seattle and stayed for the funeral. They were worried about me. They were kind. They were present. And then, gradually, life called them back to their own concerns, and I was alone in the house Martin and I had shared for 3 decades. That's when I became useful again. Not as Anne, the woman with dreams and desires and a list of places to see before she died, but as Grandma Anne, free babysitter, occasional housekeeper, emergency contact, the person you called when you needed something. Rebecca was the first to start relying on me. She'd had her 3rd child, little Emma, just 6 months before Martin died, and she was overwhelmed. Her husband Derek worked long hours at his law firm, and Rebecca was trying to manage a part-time job from home while raising 3 kids under the age of 8. So I stepped in. Because that's what mothers do, right? That's what grandmothers do. First it was just a few hours here and there. Could I watch Emma while Rebecca took the older 2 to soccer practice? Could I pick up groceries for her because she was swamped? Could I come over and help fold laundry because she was behind and Derek's mother was coming to visit? I said yes. I always said yes. Because I was lonely, and being needed felt better than being alone in that empty house with Martin's reading glasses still on the side table, and his jacket still hanging by the door. Then David started calling. His wife Patricia had gone back to work full-time, and they needed help with their twin boys. Could I do pickups from school on Tuesdays and Thursdays? Could I have them for dinner once a week to give Patricia a break? Could I take them for the occasional overnight so David and Patricia could have date night? I said yes to David too. Because the twins were sweet, energetic boys who called me Grandma Annie and hugged me like they meant it. And because staying busy meant I didn't have to think about Martin, or the cruise we'd never take, or the fact that I was 70 years old and my life felt like it was already over. Even Thomas, clear across the country in Seattle, started finding ways for me to be useful. He'd send me packages to wrap and mail for him when he didn't have time. He'd ask me to research things online for him. He'd call and unload his stress about his job, his girlfriend, his apartment, and I'd listen for hours because that's what I was there for. To be useful. To be available. To be Grandma. For 5 years this was my life. My calendar was filled with other people's appointments and needs. I knew the schedules of 7 grandchildren better than I knew my own preferences. I could tell you which kid had soccer practice when, who needed to be driven to piano lessons, who had a peanut allergy, who was struggling with math, who was going through a difficult phase. I could tell you what my daughter liked in her coffee, and what meal my son-in-law wouldn't eat. I could tell you the names of all my grandchildren's teachers, their best friends, their favorite TV shows. But if you'd asked me what I wanted, What I dreamed about. What would make me happy? I wouldn't have had an answer. Because somewhere along the way I'd stopped being a person with wants and needs. I'd become a resource. A convenience. A solution to other people's problems. And I told myself I was fine with that. I told myself this was what family meant. This was love. This was purpose. This was better than sitting alone in that house missing Martin. Until 6 months ago when everything changed. Started small like these things always do. Jessica, Rebecca's oldest daughter, was graduating from 8th grade. It was a big milestone, and Rebecca was planning a family celebration at her house. I offered to help with the food, naturally. I spent 2 days cooking. I made Jessica's favorite lasagna. The one with the bechamel sauce that takes forever. I made a strawberry cake from scratch because Jessica loved strawberries. I made appetizers and side dishes and enough food to feed 20 people. The morning of the party, I loaded everything into my car and drove to Rebecca's house. I was actually excited. I'd barely seen the whole family together in months. Thomas was flying in from Seattle. David and Patricia were bringing the twins. It would be like old times, everyone gathered around Rebecca's dining table, laughing and talking. When I arrived, Jessica answered the door. She was 14, right on the edge between childhood and teenagerhood, with Rebecca's dark hair and Derek's sharp features. She looked at the containers of food I was carrying and said, "Oh, Grandma, Mom said you didn't need to bring so much. We're ordering pizza." I stood there on the doorstep, holding containers that represented 2 days of work, and felt something crack inside my chest. "Pizza," I said. "But I made your favorite lasagna." Jessica shrugged. "That's nice, but everyone wanted pizza. It's easier." Then she turned and walked away, leaving me standing there. I carried the food inside anyway. Rebecca was in the kitchen, and when she saw me, she looked embarrassed. "Mom, I told you on the phone we were keeping it simple. You didn't have to go to all this trouble. You said you were planning a celebration," I said. "I wanted to contribute. And that's sweet, but honestly, we just don't need all this food. We're just doing casual, you know? Pizza and ice cream. Easy cleanup." She was already moving away, distracted by her phone. "You can leave it if you want and we'll have leftovers, I guess." I left it. I put my containers in her refrigerator, next to the store-bought ice cream and the cases of soda, and I went out to the living room where the family was gathering. The party was fine. People ate pizza. Jessica opened presents. Everyone took photos. And my lasagna and strawberry cake sat untouched in the kitchen. When I left that night, Rebecca tried to send the food back home with me. "You should take this, Mom. We're never going to eat all of it." Like the 2 days I'd spent cooking were nothing. Like my contribution was just clutter she needed to clear out of her refrigerator. I drove home that night and sat in my car in the driveway for 20 minutes before I could make myself go inside. Something had shifted. Something had broken. And I couldn't pretend anymore that everything was fine. But I didn't do anything about it. Not yet. Because even though I felt hurt and dismissed, I still told myself it was a misunderstanding. Rebecca was busy. Jessica was a teenager. It wasn't personal. Except then it happened again. A few weeks later, David called me on a Tuesday morning. "Mom, Patricia's stuck in a meeting that's running late. Can you get the twins from school?" "I have a dentist appointment," I said. It was the first time in months I'd scheduled something for myself. "Can you reschedule?" David asked like it was the most natural thing in the world. "This is really important." "My dentist is hard to get appointments with," I said. "I've had this scheduled for 6 weeks. Mom, I wouldn't ask if it wasn't urgent. Patricia is going to lose her mind if someone doesn't get the boys. Can't you just reschedule?" And because I was trained, because I'd been doing this for 5 years, because I didn't know how to say no to my children, I said, "Okay, I'll call the dentist." I picked up the twins. I gave them snacks. I helped them with homework. David showed up 3 hours later, gave me a distracted kiss on the cheek, loaded the boys in his car and left. He didn't ask about my dentist appointment. He didn't thank me for rearranging my schedule. He just took what he needed and left. That night, I looked at the list on my refrigerator. The list Martin and I had made together. Paris, Rome, Athens, Barcelona, the Greek islands. It was yellowed with age, and some of the tape had come loose at the corners. I touched Martin's handwriting, And I cried for the first time in months. Not just for Martin but for myself. For the life I wasn't living. For the dreams that were dying while I babysat and cooked food no one wanted and canceled my own appointments so I could be available for everyone else. If you're someone who's ever felt invisible in your own life, you know what happens next. The final straw isn't usually something big. Something small. Something that shouldn't matter but somehow crystallizes everything you've been trying not to see. For me, it was a Tuesday afternoon in Rebecca's living room. I was there babysitting Emma, who was now 5 years old and in kindergarten. Rebecca had asked me to watch her for a few hours while she went to get her hair done. Jessica was home from school. She was in 9th grade now, and she'd brought a friend over. They were sprawling on the couch with their phones, mostly ignoring me and Emma. I was sitting in the armchair, helping Emma with a puzzle, when I overheard Jessica talking to her friend. They weren't being quiet. They weren't even trying to be discreet. They were just talking the way teenagers do, like the adults in the room don't exist or don't matter. My mom wanted to sign up for this yoga retreat, Jessica was saying to her friend, but my grandma totally guilt-tripped her about it. I froze. I hadn't said anything to Rebecca about any yoga retreat. I didn't even know she was considering one. That sucks, the friend said. Is your grandma like super controlling? Jessica laughed. No, she's just, I don't know, old-fashioned? She thinks my mom should always be available for us kids, and she's always offering to help with stuff, but then she makes it seem like we owe her something. It's kind of exhausting. I felt like I'd been slapped. Every piece of help I'd offered, every meal I'd cooked, every time I'd rearranged my life to accommodate theirs. Jessica was characterizing it as manipulation, as guilt-tripping. My mom says older people get like that, the friend offered. They can't accept that the world has moved on without them, so they try to make themselves necessary. Exactly, Jessica said. Like, I love my grandma, but sometimes I just want to tell her to stay where she belongs and let us live our lives. Nobody wants to see an old woman trying to relive her youth or whatever. It's kind of sad. Stay where you belong. Nobody wants to see an old woman trying to relive her youth. I sat there with Emma's puzzle pieces in my lap, and something inside me turned to ice. Not hot anger but cold, clear rage. The kind of rage that doesn't make you yell or cry. The kind that makes you see everything with absolute clarity. I'd given up 5 years of my life for these people. I put my own grief on hold. I'd canceled dentist appointments and abandoned my dreams and filled my days with their needs and their children and their problems. And I was old-fashioned. I was exhausting. I was trying to make myself necessary. I finished the puzzle with Emma. I waited until Rebecca came home, her hair freshly styled, chatting happily about her afternoon. I smiled and nodded and collected my purse. And I drove home in silence. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with Martin's list, and I made a decision. I was 72 years old. I'd been a good wife. I'd been a good mother. I'd been a devoted grandmother. And none of it had been enough to make me matter as a person. None of it had earned me the right to be seen as someone with my own desires and dreams. So I was going to stop waiting for permission. I was going to stop trying to be useful. I was going to live what was left of my life on my own terms. The next morning, I went to the travel agency in town. Yes, I know most people book travel online now, but I'm 72 and I wanted someone to walk me through the options. The agent was a young woman named Claire, probably in her 30s, with kind eyes and an enthusiasm for travel that reminded me of myself 40 years ago. I want to book a cruise, I told her. Mediterranean. 2 weeks. The nicest cabin I can afford. Claire's eyes lit up. How wonderful. Is this for you and your husband? Just me, I said. My husband passed away 5 years ago. I'm so sorry, Claire said, and she actually looked like she meant it. But how exciting that you're doing this for yourself. Do you have dates in mind? I thought about Rebecca's calendar, which I knew by heart. About David's schedule. About all the times over the next few months when they probably need me. As soon as possible, I said. Whatever you have available in the next month. Claire found me a cruise leaving in 3 weeks. The Caribbean Voyager departing from Miami, stopping in Barcelona, Rome, Athens and several Greek islands. 2 weeks. A balcony cabin. $3,500, which was more than I'd spent on myself in the last 5 years combined. I'll take it, I said. Claire processed my credit card, printed my confirmation, and gave me a folder with all my documents. "You're going to have the most amazing time," she said. My grandmother took a solo cruise after my grandfather died, and she said it changed her life. "That's what I'm hoping for," I said. That night I called Rebecca, not to ask permission, not to check if it was convenient, to inform her. "Hi, Mom," she said when she answered. I could hear the kids in the background and the TV and all the chaos of her life. "What's up? Did you remember Emma's recital is Thursday? You said you'd come." "I won't be able to make the recital," I said. "I'm going on a cruise." There was a pause. "You're what?" "I'm going on a Mediterranean cruise. I leave in 3 weeks. I'll be gone for 2 weeks." "Mom, you can't be serious. You've never traveled alone. And what about Emma's recital? She's been practicing for weeks. And David needs you to watch the twins next month when Patricia's out of town. And Thomas is coming to visit, and he was planning to stay with you. They'll have to make other arrangements," I said. My voice was calm, steady. I felt more certain of myself than I had in years. "But Mom," "Rebecca, I've made my decision. I'm going. I just wanted to let you know so you could plan accordingly." "Are you okay?" Rebecca asked, and now she sounded worried. "Is this about Dad? Are you having some kind of episode?" "I'm not having an episode. I'm taking a trip. People do it all the time. But you never have. You've never even mentioned wanting to travel. This is so sudden. Maybe you should talk to someone. Dr. Morrison, maybe. Just to make sure you're thinking clearly." Dr. Morrison was my primary care physician, a perfectly nice man who treated me like I was 90 instead of 72. "I'm thinking more clearly than I have in years," I said. "I'll call you before I leave." I hung up before she could argue further. My hands were shaking, but it was adrenaline, not fear. I'd done it. I'd actually told my daughter no. Within an hour, my phone started ringing. First David, then Thomas. Rebecca had called them both, and now they were tag-teaming me with concern and confusion and poorly concealed frustration. "Mom, Rebecca said you're going on a cruise?" David said. "Is everything okay? You're not sick, are you?" "I'm fine. I'm just taking a vacation." "But you hate traveling alone. You always said that. After Dad died, you said you couldn't imagine going anywhere without him." "I changed my mind." "Mom, this isn't like you. We're worried. Can I come over? I think we should talk about this." "There's nothing to talk about. I've booked the cruise. I'm going." Thomas was more direct. "Mom, what's going on? Rebecca says you're being weird. Are you mad about something? Did someone say something to upset you?" For a split second, I considered telling him about Jessica's comment, about feeling invisible and dismissed and taken for granted. But I realized it wouldn't matter. They wouldn't understand. They'd find ways to explain it away or tell me I was overreacting or suggest that I was being too sensitive. "I'm not mad," I said. "I'm just living my life. By suddenly booking a cruise alone? That's not normal, Mom." "Maybe it should be," I said, and I hung up on him too. For the next 3 weeks they didn't let up. Rebecca called every other day, trying different tactics. First concern, then guilt, then bargaining. What if we planned a family trip together? Later in the year? Somewhere everyone could go? Wouldn't that be better than going alone? "I don't want to go later. I want to go now." "But Mom, it's just so sudden. And we need you. Emma's been so upset since you said you'd miss her recital. She doesn't understand why Grandma isn't coming." That one stung, but I held firm. "Emma will have many recitals in her life. And you'll record this one, and I'll watch it when I get back. It's not the same." "No, it's not. But it's how it's going to be." David tried a different approach. He showed up at my house one Saturday morning with coffee and bagels, clearly planning to have a serious talk. "Mom, we need to discuss this trip. Have you thought about the logistics? Do you have travel insurance? Have you been to the doctor to make sure you're healthy enough to travel? What happens if you have a medical emergency in the middle of the Mediterranean?" "I have travel insurance. I saw Dr. Morrison last week and got a clean bill of health. And if I have a medical emergency, the ship has a doctor on board." "But Mom," "David, I'm 72, not 92. I'm in good health. I'm not asking for your permission. I'm telling you what I'm doing. He'd looked at me like he didn't recognize me. You've never been this stubborn before. Maybe I should have been. Even Jessica got involved, which was ironic considering she was the catalyst for this entire thing. Rebecca must have put her up to it, because Jessica called me one evening, her voice small and guilty. Grandma? It's Jessica. Mom says you're going on a trip. That's right. And you're going to miss Emma's recital. Yes. Are you mad at us? I could have said yes. I could have told her exactly what I'd overheard, and how her words had cut me to the bone, and how I'd spent 5 years making myself useful only to be dismissed as old-fashioned and exhausting. But Jessica was 14. She was a child, parroting things she'd heard from adults or absorbed from a culture that treats older women like we're past our expiration date. I'm not mad, I said. I'm just choosing to do something for myself. But Grandma, you never do things like this. It's weird. Maybe it's time I started. The worst was 2 days before I was scheduled to leave. All 3 of my children showed up at my house together. Rebecca, David, and Thomas, united in their concern and their conviction that I was making a terrible mistake. They sat in my living room, the living room where I'd hosted 1,000 family dinners, where I'd rocked their babies, where I'd listened to their problems and celebrated their victories, and they staged what I can only describe as an intervention. Mom, we love you and we're worried about you, Rebecca started. She'd clearly been designated spokesperson. This trip is completely out of character. You've never done anything like this. And the timing is so strange. We think maybe you're not processing Dad's death in a healthy way. Dad died 5 years ago, I said. Exactly, David jumped in. 5 years and you've never wanted to travel. And now suddenly you're booking cruises alone? It doesn't make sense. It makes perfect sense to me. Thomas leaned forward. Mom, be honest. Are you trying to prove something? Because you don't have to prove anything to us. We know you're capable. We know you're independent. But this feels like you're trying to make a point. Maybe I am, I said. Maybe I'm making the point that I'm still alive. That I have desires and dreams that don't revolve around being useful to you. They exchanged glances. What does that mean? Rebecca asked. We've never made you feel like you were just useful to us. We love you. Do you? The question came out sharper than I intended. Or do you love what I do for you? Mom, that's not fair, David said. Of course we love you. You're our mother. And what do you know about me as a person? Not as your mother or your babysitter or your cook. But as Anne. What do I like? What do I want? What are my dreams? They were silent. Actually silent. 'Cause they didn't know. They'd never asked. Do any of you know that your father and I planned to travel after he retired? I asked. That we had a list of places we wanted to see? That we spent years dreaming about the trips we'd take together. I remember Dad talking about traveling, Thomas said slowly. But you never mentioned it after he died. Because I was too busy helping all of you. Because every time I had a free moment to think about myself, one of you needed something. And I let it happen. I let myself become invisible. But I'm done with that now. Mom, we don't think you're invisible, Rebecca said. We need you. The kids need you. You're so important to this family. I'm important as Grandma, as the babysitter, as the cook, but not as Anne. That's not true. Jessica called me old-fashioned, I said, and Rebecca went pale. She told her friend that I was exhausting, that I should stay where I belong, that nobody wants to see an old woman trying to relive her youth. Rebecca's mouth opened and closed. When did she? A few weeks ago. I was babysitting Emma. Jessica didn't know I could hear her. Or maybe she did and she didn't care. Mom, she's 14. She doesn't mean. It doesn't matter what she meant. What matters is that it was a wake-up call. I'm 72 years old. If I don't live my life now, when will I? When I'm 80? When I'm 90? When I'm dead? You're being dramatic, David said. No, I'm being honest. For the first time in 5 years, I'm being completely honest. I love all of you. I love my grandchildren. But I can't keep living my life entirely for you. I need to live it for me too. Thomas shook his head. So you're just going to abandon us? Just like that. I'm taking a 2-week vacation. That's not abandonment. That's self-care. But what about Emma's recital? And the twins. You'll figure it out. You'll hire a babysitter. You'll ask Patricia's mother. You'll take time off work. You'll do what every other family does when they don't have a grandmother who's dropped everything for the past 5 years. They left shortly after that, frustrated and confused and, I think, a little angry. Rebecca hugged me goodbye, but it was stiff and perfunctory. David kissed my cheek but didn't meet my eyes. Thomas just said, "I hope you know what you're doing, Mom," and walked out. After they left, I sat in the silence of my house and wondered if I just made the biggest mistake of my life. What if they were right? What if I was being dramatic or irrational? What if something happened to me on this cruise, and I damaged my relationship with my children for nothing? But then I looked at Martin's list on the refrigerator, and I knew I had to do this. Not just for me but for him. For the life we'd planned and never got to live. For all the dreams we'd deferred until someday. Someday had to be now. Because I was running out of some days. The morning I left for the cruise, none of my children came to see me off. Rebecca texted, "Have a safe trip, Mom. Call when you can." David sent, "Be careful. Keep your phone charged." Thomas didn't message at all. I drove myself to the airport. I checked my bag. I went through security. I boarded the plane to Miami. And with every step I felt lighter, freer, more myself than I'd felt in years. Now I'm standing at the boarding terminal of the Caribbean Voyager, watching the ship that will be my home for the next 2 weeks. It's enormous, like a floating city, with balconies stacked 12 levels high and lights twinkling against the evening sky. I'm clutching my boarding pass, and my heart is pounding, and I'm terrified and exhilarated in equal measure. A crew member checks my documents and welcomes me aboard. "First cruise, ma'am." "First solo cruise," I say. "You're going to love it," he says with a warm smile. "Welcome to the Caribbean Voyager." I walk up the gangway, leaving solid ground behind, and I think, this is it. This is the moment everything changes. My cabin is on deck 8, with a balcony overlooking the ocean. It's small but elegant, with a queen bed, a little sitting area, and sliding glass doors that open onto a private balcony. I drop my carry-on on the bed and step outside. The Miami harbor stretches out below me, and beyond it the open ocean. I call Rebecca. She answers on the 3rd ring. "Mom? Did you make it okay?" "I'm on the ship," I say. "It's beautiful." "That's good. Listen, I can't talk long. We're about to leave for Emma's recital." "Of course. The recital I'm missing. Tell Emma I hope it goes wonderfully. I'll watch the video when I get back." "Sure." "Okay. Stay safe, Mom." She hangs up before I can say I love you. I stand on my balcony and watch the sun set over Miami, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and gold. In an hour, the ship will leave port. In 2 weeks, I'll be a different person. I can feel it already, the transformation beginning. For the first time in 5 years, I'm not grandma and or mom, or the convenient solution to someone else's problem. I'm just Anne, a woman with a list of dreams and 2 weeks to start checking them off. The ship's horn sounds deep and resonant, signaling our departure. I close my eyes and feel the vibration of the engine starting up beneath my feet. We're moving. We're leaving. I'm leaving. And I'm not looking back. The first night on the Caribbean Voyager is overwhelming in the best possible way. After the ship leaves port, there's a mandatory safety drill where everyone has to gather at their designated muster stations with their life jackets. It's chaos, hundreds of people in bright orange life vests, crew members shouting instructions in accents from around the world, children running between adults' legs. I find my muster station and stand next to a couple who look to be in their 60s. The woman smiles at me. "First cruise. Is it that obvious?" I ask. She laughs. "You have that look. Like you're taking it all in." "I'm Margaret, and this is my husband, Bill. This is our 8th cruise." "And," I say. "And yes, it's my first." "Solo?" Bill asks. "Solo," I confirm. "Good for you," Margaret says, and she sounds like she means it. "We see a lot of solo travelers, especially women. You're going to have a wonderful time." The drill ends, and we're released back into the ship. I wander for a while, trying to get my bearings. The Caribbean Voyager is enormous. There are restaurants and bars, a theater, a casino, multiple pools, a spa, a gym, a library. There are art galleries and shops and quiet corners with comfortable chairs overlooking the ocean. It's like a floating resort, and I'm free to explore all of it. I eat dinner in the main dining room, a vast space with chandeliers and waiters in crisp white jackets. I'm seated at a table with 3 other women, all traveling solo. There's Linda, a retired teacher from Boston, Diane, a divorcee from Texas celebrating her 60th birthday, and Pauline, a widow from Canada who's been taking solo cruises for 5 years. My husband died and my kids expected me to just sit at home and wait for visits, Pauline tells us over our appetizers. So I decided to start living instead. I've been to Alaska, the Caribbean, the Mediterranean, the Baltic. This is my 12th cruise. 12. I say. How do you afford it? Pauline shrugs. I stopped spending money on things that don't matter. I don't need a big house or a new car. I need experiences, adventures, stories to tell. Linda raises her wine glass. To adventures, she says. To adventures, we echo clinking glasses. That night I stand on my balcony and watch the ocean slide past in the darkness. The stars are brighter here, away from city lights. The air smells like salt and possibility. I think about Rebecca and David and Thomas, probably going about their evening routines without me. I think about Jessica's recital, which is over by now. I wonder if they miss me or if they've barely noticed I'm gone. And then I stop wondering, because it doesn't matter. For the next 2 weeks, I'm not responsible for them. I'm only responsible for myself. The next morning, I wake to sunlight streaming through the balcony doors and the gentle rocking of the ship. For a moment, I forget where I am. Then I remember and I smile. I have breakfast on my balcony. Room service delivered by a cheerful steward named Miguel, who tells me we're approaching Barcelona. I can see the coast of Spain in the distance, a line of buildings rising up from the sea. Barcelona, the first city on Martin's in my list. I meet Linda, Diane, and Pauline for our shore excursion. We've all booked the same walking tour of Barcelona's Gothic quarter. Our guide is a young Spanish woman named Carmen who leads us through narrow medieval streets, explaining the history of the city in accented but perfect English. I stand in front of the Cathedral of Barcelona, its Gothic spires reaching toward the sky, and I cry. Not sad tears but tears of overwhelming emotion. I'm here. I'm actually here. This place Martin and I dreamed about for decades. He should be here with me. But he's not, and I am, and somehow that has to be enough. Linda notices and touches my arm. You okay? My husband and I plan to see Barcelona together, I say. He died before we could. He'd be proud of you for coming, Linda says. For doing it anyway. We visit La Rambla, the famous street filled with street performers and flower stalls and cafes. We eat tapas at a tiny restaurant where the owner doesn't speak English, and we have to point at pictures to order. We drink Spanish wine and laugh at our mispronunciations. We walk until our feet hurt and then we walk some more. When I get back to the ship that evening, exhausted and sunburned and happier than I've been in years, I call Rebecca. Mom, how's the trip? I'm in Barcelona, I say. I saw the Gothic quarter and La Rambla. I ate authentic tapas. That's nice, Mom. Listen, can I call you back? Emma's having a meltdown about her Halloween costume, and I'm trying to deal with it. Sure, I say, but she's already hung up. I should feel hurt, but instead I feel free, because her problem isn't my problem right now. Emma's costume crisis will be resolved without me. Life will go on. And I'm in Barcelona. Over the next few days we visit Rome, Athens, and Santorini. In Rome, I stand in the Colosseum and imagine gladiators fighting 2,000 years ago. I throw a coin in the Trevi fountain and make a wish. I eat carbonara in a tiny trattoria near the Pantheon, and it's the best pasta I've ever tasted. In Athens, I climb the steps to the Acropolis and stand in front of the Parthenon. Our guide tells us that the temple has stood for over 2,000 years, surviving wars and earthquakes and the passage of time. I think about my own resilience, about surviving Martin's death, about surviving 5 years of invisibility, about still being here, still standing, still capable of climbing ancient steps in the Greek sun. In Santorini, I watch the sunset from the cliff-top town of Oe, and it's so beautiful it doesn't seem real. The white buildings with blue domed roofs, the sun sinking into the Aegean Sea, the way the light turns everything golden. I take photos, but I know they won't capture it. Some things you just have to experience. I'm having dinner with Linda, Diane, and Pauline that night when Pauline asks me, "So what made you decide to do this? Take a solo cruise?" I tell them about Martin, about the 5 years of babysitting and being useful, about Jessica's comment, about realizing I was disappearing into a role instead of living as a person. "Good for you for getting out," Diane says. "My ex-husband tried to turn me into someone I wasn't. When we divorced, I decided I was going to be exactly who I wanted to be. No apologies. My kids think I'm crazy for spending money on cruises," Pauline admits. "They think I should save it for them for their inheritance. But I earned that money. I'm going to spend it on experiences while I can still enjoy them." "Do you ever feel guilty?" I ask. "For putting yourself first?" "Every damn day," Linda says, and we all laugh. But then I remember that I spent 40 years putting everyone else first. My husband, my kids, my students. And when I retired and my husband died, I realized no one was going to give me permission to live my life. I had to give myself permission. That night, alone in my cabin, I think about permission. About how women my age are expected to ask for it. To apologize for taking up space, for having desires, for wanting things. About how we're supposed to shrink ourselves to make room for everyone else. I think about Jessica telling me to stay where I belong. About Rebecca expecting me to always be available. About David and Thomas treating my time like it had no value because I wasn't getting paid for it. And I realize I'm not angry anymore. I'm just done. Done shrinking. Done apologizing. Done waiting for permission. The cruise has a halfway point party. A big celebration on the pool deck with music and dancing and cocktails. I almost don't go. I'm tired from the day's excursion, and I'm 72 years old, and what business do I have at a party? But then I think, what business do I have sitting alone in my cabin when there's a party? I put on the nicest dress I packed, a blue sundress that Martin always said brought out my eyes, and I go to the party. The music is loud and the deck is crowded and I feel out of place for about 5 minutes. Then Linda finds me and pulls me to the bar, and Diane gets us all cocktails with tiny umbrellas, and Pauline drags us to the dance floor. I can't remember the last time I danced. Maybe at Rebecca's wedding? That was 15 years ago. But now I'm dancing under the stars on the deck of a cruise ship in the middle of the Mediterranean. And I don't care if I look foolish or if my dancing is outdated. I'm here. I'm alive. I'm doing it. A man asks me to dance. A gentleman probably about my age, with kind eyes and a nice smile. His name is Robert and he's traveling solo too. His wife died 3 years ago, he tells me, and his children finally convinced him to take a trip. Convinced you or pushed you? I ask as we sway to the music. He laughs. Pushed. They were worried I was becoming a hermit. They're probably right. My children think I'm having some kind of crisis, I admit. Are you? Maybe. Or maybe I'm just finally living. Well, Robert says, if this is a crisis, it's a pretty good one. We dance for 3 songs and then we sit at a table and talk for an hour. He's a retired engineer from Chicago. He has 2 daughters and 5 grandchildren. He likes mystery novels and terrible action movies and hiking. He tells me about his wife, Patricia, who died of cancer, and how lost he felt after she was gone. But being here, he says, gesturing to the ship, the ocean, the stars, it helps. It reminds me that there's still life to live. Still things to see. Exactly, I say, and I feel seen in a way I haven't felt in years. We exchange cabin numbers before the night ends. Maybe we can have dinner tomorrow? Robert suggests. I'm tired of eating alone. I'd like that, I say. That night I text Rebecca. Having an amazing time. Hope you're all well. She responds an hour later. That's great, Mom. David needs you to call him when you can. Something about Thanksgiving plans. Thanksgiving is 2 months away. It can wait. I don't call David. The second week of the cruise is different from the first. I'm more confident now, more comfortable. I know my way around the ship. I have friends. I have routines. I have breakfast on my balcony every morning, watching the ocean and reading the book I bought in the ship's library. I take a yoga class on the pool deck at 10. I have lunch with Linda and Diane. I explore whatever port we're in, Mykonos, Crete, Cyprus, Malta. I have dinner with Robert and afterward we walk the deck and talk about our lives. Robert is easy to be with. He doesn't expect anything from me. He doesn't need me to solve his problems or cook his meals or rearrange my schedule for him. He just enjoys my company and I enjoy his. We talk about our marriages, our children, our regrets and hopes. We talk about books and movies and politics and travel. We laugh. God, we laugh so much. You're easy to talk to. He tells me one night as we're sitting on deck chairs watching the moon on the water. So are you, I say. It's been a long time since anyone just listened to me. Not as mom or grandma. Just as Anne. And is pretty great, he says, and I believe him. On the 10th day we dock in Malta, and Robert and I skip the organized excursions. Instead, we hire a taxi driver to show us the island. We visit ancient temples and medieval fortresses. We eat lunch at a cafe overlooking the harbor. We buy postcards and sit in the shade writing them. I write one to each of my grandchildren. Short notes telling them I'm thinking of them, that I love them, that I'm seeing amazing things. I almost write one to Rebecca, but I don't know what to say. Wish you understood why I needed this. Sorry I'm not there to make your life easier. I'm happier than I've been in years. Instead, I write a postcard to Martin. I know it's silly, he's been dead for 5 years, but I write it anyway. Dear Martin, I'm in Malta. Remember when we talked about coming here? It's everything we imagined. I miss you every day, but I'm learning to be happy without you. I hope that's okay. I hope you'd be proud of me. Love always, Anne. I keep the postcard. I don't mail it, but writing it helps somehow. That night, there's a formal dinner on the ship, one of those fancy affairs where people dress up and the dining room feels like something from another era. I put on the only fancy dress I packed, a black cocktail dress I haven't worn since Martin's funeral. It's depressing wearing this dress. It makes me remember standing beside his casket, shaking hands with mourners, feeling like my life was over. But tonight, I'm not a widow at a funeral. I'm a woman at a formal dinner on a cruise ship. I put on lipstick and earrings, and when I look in the mirror I see Anne. Not old, not young, just me. Robert is waiting for me at our table, wearing a suit and tie, looking handsome and nervous. You look beautiful, he says. You clean up pretty well yourself, I say, and he laughs. Dinner is 7 courses, each more elaborate than the last. There's champagne and wine, and by the end we're both a little tipsy and very happy. The ship's orchestra is playing, and couples are dancing. Would you like to dance? Robert asks. I thought you'd never ask. We dance to old songs, the kind Martin and I used to dance to in our living room when the kids were asleep. Robert's a better dancer than Martin was, or maybe I'm just less self-conscious than I used to be. We move around the floor, and I rest my head on his shoulder, and for a moment I let myself imagine what it would be like to have this. Not just for 2 weeks but for longer. To have companionship and laughter and someone who sees me. What are you thinking about? Robert asks. That this feels like a dream, I say. And I'm afraid I'm going to wake up. Me too, he admits. But maybe that's what makes it special. Knowing it won't last forever. The next day I call home. Not because I have to, but because I want to. I want to tell someone about the incredible time I'm having. Rebecca answers and she sounds stressed. Mom, thank God. I've been trying to reach you for 2 days. I've been busy. What's wrong? What's wrong? Mom, David's wife is in the hospital. She fell and broke her ankle, and David needs help with the twins. I've been trying to manage my own kids and help him, but it's too much. When are you back? My stomach sinks. Patricia's in the hospital? Is she okay? She'll be fine, but she's going to be laid up for weeks. David needs you to come stay with them and help with the boys. When does your cruise end? I have 4 more days. 4 days? Mom, he needs help now. Rebecca. I'm in the middle of the Mediterranean. I can't exactly swim home. Can you get a flight from one of the ports? Can you cut the cruise short? I close my eyes. Here it is. The test. The moment where I have to decide if I'm really serious about putting myself first, or if I'll fold the moment my family needs me. No, I say. No. I'm not cutting my cruise short. I'll be home in 4 days. Until then, David will have to figure something out. Mom, Patricia's in the hospital. And I'm sorry about that. But David has other options. He can take time off work. He can hire help. He can ask Patricia's mother. There are solutions that don't involve me abandoning my vacation. Abandoning your... Mom, this is your family. And I've been there for my family for 5 years straight. I'm asking for 2 weeks. That's all. 2 weeks where I'm not the solution to everyone's problems. Rebecca is silent for a long moment. When she speaks again, her voice is cold. You've changed. Yes, I say. I have. She hangs up. No goodbye. Just silence. I stand on my balcony, shaking, torn between guilt and anger and resolution. Part of me wants to call her back, apologize, promise to come home early. Part of me wants to find a way to fix this. But a bigger part of me knows that if I give in now, nothing will change. I'll go right back to being the convenient grandmother, the always available mother, the woman with no life of her own. I text David instead. Rebecca told me about Patricia. I'm so sorry. I'll be home in 4 days and happy to help then. In the meantime, I'm sure you'll figure out a solution. Love you. He doesn't respond. That night, I tell Robert what happened. We're having drinks in one of the ship's bars, a quiet place with leather chairs and soft jazz playing. Do you think I'm being selfish? I ask him. I think you're being human, he says. You're allowed to have boundaries. You're allowed to take a vacation without being on call for emergencies. But Patricia's injured. And that's terrible. But you being there won't make her ankle heal faster. And you being on a cruise doesn't make you a bad mother or grandmother. Try telling my kids that. They'll figure it out, Robert says. And maybe it's good for them to learn that you're not always available. That you have your own life. I want to believe him. But the guilt sits heavy in my chest for the rest of the evening. The last few days of the cruise go by too fast. We stop in Sicily and Naples. We eat incredible Italian food and drink wine and walk through ancient ruins. Robert and I spend every moment together, and I start to dread the cruise ending. Not just because I'll have to go back to real life, but because I'll have to say goodbye to him. On our last night, we have dinner at the ship's fancy restaurant, the one that requires reservations and has a dress code. We order the most expensive things on the menu and split a bottle of champagne. What happens when we get back? I ask him. I go back to Chicago. You go back to? Where are you from? North Carolina. About 2 hours from Charlotte. That's not so far, he says, but we both know it's far enough. Far enough that this was a cruise romance, a beautiful interlude, not the start of something real. We could stay in touch, I suggest. Emails. Phone calls. We could, he agrees. But Anne, I need to tell you something. This cruise, meeting you, it's been incredible. You've reminded me that I can still feel joy, that I can still connect with someone, but I'm not ready for a relationship. I'm not sure I ever will be. Patricia was my whole world, and I'm still figuring out how to live without her. I should be hurt, but I'm not, because I understand. Martin was my whole world too, I say. And these 2 weeks have been about learning to be Anne again, not Martin's wife. Not my children's mother. Just Anne. And I think I need more time to figure out who she is. So we're 2 people who needed this exact moment, Robert says. Who needed each other for these 2 weeks. But who might not need each other after. Exactly. We hold hands across the table, and it's not sad. It's bittersweet and perfect and exactly right. Thank you, I say. For seeing me. Thank you for the same. The ship docks in Miami the next morning. I pack my bags, say goodbye to Linda and Diane and Pauline, and promise to stay in touch. Pauline gives me her email address. Let me know if you book another cruise, she says. Maybe we'll end up on the same ship again. Robert and I say goodbye in the terminal. We hug and he kisses my cheek and then we go our separate ways. I watch him disappear into the crowd, and I feel a pang of loss. But also gratitude. He was exactly what I needed when I needed it. I catch a cab to the airport and board my flight home. The plane is full of families and business travelers, and people returning to their ordinary lives. I look out the window at the clouds and think about everything I've seen in the past 2 weeks. Barcelona, Rome, Athens, Santorini, Malta, Sicily, Naples. All the places Martin and I dreamed about. I did it. I actually did it. When I land in Charlotte, I turn my phone back on. It explodes with messages. Texts from Rebecca, David, and Thomas. Voicemails. Few emails. I don't read them. Not yet. First I need to get home. I need to sleep in my own bed. I need to process everything before I deal with my family. The house is exactly as I left it. Quiet. Empty. Martin's reading glass is still on the side table. His jacket still by the door. For 5 years these things have made me sad. Reminders of everything I lost. But tonight they just feel like memories. Bittersweet but not suffocating. I make myself a cup of tea and sit at the kitchen table. Martin's list is still on the refrigerator, but now several of the items are crossed off. Barcelona, Rome, Athens, the Greek islands. I take a pen and add new items to the list. Paris, Venice, Ireland, Scotland, Japan, Australia, New Zealand. So many places I still want to see. So many experiences I still want to have. Then I take a deep breath and read my messages. Rebecca's texts start apologetic and get progressively angrier. Mom, I'm sorry for being harsh. Please call me. Mom, David really needs you. Mom, this is ridiculous. You're being selfish. Fine. Don't call. We'll manage without you. David's messages are more restrained but equally frustrated. Mom, I understand you needed a vacation, but family comes first. We need to talk when you get back. Thomas's messages are the most cutting. Mom, I don't know what's gotten into you, but this isn't like you. You're acting like a selfish teenager. Grow up. I set down my phone and stare at the kitchen wall. This is the moment. This is where I decide whether the past 2 weeks were just a vacation or the start of a new life. I call Rebecca. She answers immediately. Mom. Finally. I'm home, I say. How's Patricia? She's fine. David hired a babysitter to help with the twins. It's costing him a fortune, but they're managing. I'm glad they found a solution. Mom, we need to talk about your behavior. This whole cruise thing was the best thing I've done for myself in years, I interrupt. And I'm not apologizing for it. You left us hanging. I took a 2-week vacation. I didn't abandon anyone. You all had other options. You just didn't want to use them because I've always been the easy solution. That's not fair. Isn't it? Rebecca, when's the last time you asked me what I wanted? What I needed? Not as your babysitter or your mother, but as a person. She's quiet. I love you, I continue. I love all my children and all my grandchildren. But I can't keep living my life entirely for you. I need to live it for me too. And if that makes me selfish in your eyes, then I guess I'm selfish. Mom, I'm going to keep traveling. I'm going to keep doing things that make me happy. And I'm still going to be your mother and the kids' grandmother. But on my terms. Not as the always available solution to your problems. So what, you're just not going to babysit anymore? Not going to be part of this family? I'll babysit when I'm available and when I want to. I'll be part of this family when you treat me like a person with my own life. Not just a resource. Rebecca is crying now. I can't believe you're doing this. Dad would be so disappointed. That one hits hard. But I push through. Dad would be proud of me, I say. Because he knew how much I gave up for this family. How much of myself I lost after he died. He'd be happy I'm finally living the life we planned together. You're not the same person anymore, Rebecca says. No, I agree. I'm not. I'm better. I hang up before she can respond. My hands are shaking and I'm crying and I feel like I might throw up. But I also feel lighter than I have in 5 years. Over the next few weeks, things are tense with my kids. David calls once and we have a stilted conversation where he makes it clear he thinks I was wrong but he's trying to be diplomatic. Thomas doesn't call at all. Rebecca texts occasionally, short messages with no warmth. But I don't back down. I start planning my next trip, Paris in the spring, just like Martin and I always talked about. I sign up for a French language class at the community center. I join a book club at the library. I start living as in, not just as mom or grandma. And slowly things start to shift. Emma calls me one day to tell me about a science project she's working on. Just to share, not because she needs something. We talk for 20 minutes about volcanoes and baking soda experiments, and it's the best conversation I've had with her in months. Jessica calls and apologizes. Grandma, Mom told me what I said. About you being old-fashioned. I'm really sorry. I didn't mean it the way it sounded. It's okay, I say. But Jessica, can I give you some advice? Don't ever let anyone make you feel like you have to shrink yourself to fit their expectations. Not when you're 14, not when you're 40, not when you're 70. Be yourself. Take up space. Live your life on your terms. I will, Grandma. And I think it's really cool that you went on that cruise by yourself. Thank you, Jessica. That means a lot coming from you. David eventually comes around. He calls one afternoon and says, Mom, I owe you an apology. I thought about what you said about having boundaries and you were right. We took advantage of you. Not on purpose, but we did. And I'm sorry. I appreciate that, I say. And David, I'm still here for you. Still your mother. But I need you to understand that I'm a person too. I know. And I'm going to do better. We're all going to do better. Thomas takes longer. We don't have any real conversation until Christmas. He comes home for the holidays and on his last day he asks if we can talk. We sit in the living room, in the same chairs where they'd all staged their intervention 6 months ago. I've been thinking about what you said, Thomas begins, about living your life on your terms. And I realized I never do that. I spend all my time trying to meet other people's expectations, work, dating, family. And you just decided to stop doing that. You just decided to be happy. It wasn't easy, I tell him. But yes, that's what I did. I'm proud of you, Mom. I didn't understand it at first. I thought you were being selfish and irresponsible. But I understand now. We hug. And it's the first real hug I've gotten from my children in months. Christmas is different this year. I'm not the one doing all the cooking. Rebecca makes the lasagna, my lasagna recipe, but her version, her effort. I bring a salad and a pie, but I don't spend 3 days in the kitchen preparing a feast nobody wants. David and Patricia bring wine and appetizers. Thomas brings dessert from his favorite bakery in Seattle. Everyone contributes. Everyone participates. Everyone is present. And when the kids ask me to tell stories about their grandfather, about Martin, I do it without sadness swallowing me whole. I tell funny stories about the time Martin tried to fix the dishwasher and flooded the kitchen, about his terrible singing voice and how he'd still sing along to the radio, about how much he loved his grandchildren even though he only met 3 of them before he died. Grandpa Martin would love knowing that Grandma's traveling, Emma says. He always wanted to go places. He would, I agree. And I'm doing it for both of us. In February I fly to Paris. Alone. I spend 2 weeks exploring the city, the Eiffel Tower, the Louvre, Notre Dame, the catacombs, charming cafes, beautiful gardens. I eat croissants for breakfast and drink wine with lunch. I get lost in the Marais and find tiny bookshops. I sit by the Seine and write in a journal. I take myself to the ballet at the Palais Garnier and cry at the beauty of it. I eat at a fancy restaurant and order the tasting menu and sit at a table for one and feel powerful instead of lonely. I buy a beautiful silk scarf from a boutique and treat myself to expensive face cream at a department store. I live as if my life matters because it does. I send postcards home. One to Rebecca with a photo of the Eiffel Tower and a note. Thinking of you. Love, Mom. One to David with a picture of Notre Dame. Paris is beautiful. Wish you could see it. One to Thomas with the Louvre. Missing you. This reminds me of when we went to the art museum when you were little. And one to each grandchild, telling them Grandma is having adventures and thinking of them. When I get home, there are letters waiting for me. Rebecca has written a long letter apologizing for not supporting my decision, for trying to make me feel guilty, for not seeing me as a person with my own needs. David has written about how he's been more present with the twins, how he's realized he needs to do more of his own work as a father instead of relying on me. Thomas has sent a card saying he's thinking about quitting his job and taking a sabbatical to figure out what he really wants to do with his life, inspired by my example. And Jessica has written me a note that makes me cry. Dear Grandma, I've been thinking about what I said about you being old-fashioned, and I was such a jerk. You're literally the most interesting person I know. The way you just decided to live your life and stop caring what anyone thought. That's the coolest thing I've ever seen. When I'm your age, I want to be like you. Thank you for showing me that it's okay to be yourself. Love, Jessica. I frame that note and hang it in my kitchen, next to Martin's list. By spring, I've joined a travel group with other solo women travelers. Linda, Diane, and Pauline are in the group and we've become real friends. We email constantly. We're already planning our next group trip to Iceland in September. I've also started volunteering at the library, leading a travel-themed book club where we read travel memoirs and discuss them while eating international snacks. It's become so popular they've had to move us to a bigger room. The house feels different now. It's still filled with memories of Martin, but they're not sad memories anymore. They're reminders of the life we shared and the life I'm building now in his absence. I don't throw out his reading glasses or his jacket, but I do rearrange the living room. I move the couch to face the window instead of the TV. I paint the bedroom a bright yellow instead of the beige we chose together. I make the space mine while honoring who I used to be. In May, David calls with a proposition. Mom, Derek and I have been talking. We want to take you to Rome for your 73rd birthday. As a family gift. All of us, Rebecca, Derek, David, Patricia, Thomas, me, and the kids. We want to experience it with you. I'm silent for a moment, processing. My children want to travel with me. Not because they need me to do something for them, but because they want to share this part of my life. That's incredibly kind, I say. But maybe this time I should go alone. And you all can take your own trip sometime. You don't want us there? Rebecca asks, and there's hurt in her voice. I want to see you, I clarify. But I need these trips to be my time. To be about me discovering who I am and what I want. Does that make sense? Yeah, David says. Yeah, it does. But what if we do it differently? What if instead of us following your itinerary, we each book our own trips? We could give each other recommendations, book clubs ideas, but we all do our own thing. That's a beautiful idea, I say. Rebecca gets quiet for a moment and then she says, I'm going to London. I've always wanted to go, and I've always told myself I couldn't leave the kids. But if you can take solo cruises, I can take a trip to London. I'm thinking about Iceland, Thomas says in the background. That travel group Moms and made it sound amazing. We're going to visit my sister in Germany, David says. Patricia's always wanted to, and now it's a priority. I think that's wonderful, I tell them. Truly wonderful. And when you all get back, I want to hear everything. We hang up and I sit in my kitchen with my coffee, looking at Martin's list. So many items checked off now. So many more to add. My life is no longer defined by waiting or sacrificing or making myself small. It's defined by living, by experiencing, by being present in my own story instead of being a supporting character in everyone else's. 6 months after my cruise, I receive an email from Robert. I haven't heard from him since we parted ways at the Miami terminal, so seeing his name in my inbox makes my heart skip. Dear and, he writes, I've been thinking about you often and wondering how your life has unfolded since we met. I've done something I didn't think I'd ever do. I booked another cruise. To Alaska. I'm leaving next month, and I was wondering if perhaps you'd like to join me as a friend. Not as a romantic interest, but as a companion for the journey. It would be nice to share another experience with someone who understands what it means to learn how to live again. Please let me know. Robert. I read the email 3 times. My first instinct is to say no. We had our perfect moment. Why ruin it by extending it? But then I think about loneliness. About how nice it was to have a friend who understood me without needing anything from me. About how travel is even better when you have someone to share it with. I write back. Dear Robert, I would be honored to join you in Alaska. As friends. I think that's exactly what we both need. I'm looking forward to seeing you. And I tell my children about the trip, and they don't seem surprised or concerned. That's nice, Mom, Rebecca says. That he wants to be friends. Everyone needs friends. In August, I fly to Seattle to meet Robert. We board a ship bound for Alaska, and as we leave port, I stand on the deck with him and point out the glaciers and the whales and the endless mountains. I'm glad you're here, he says. So am I tell him. And I mean it. Not because I need him to complete my life, but because sharing an experience with someone enriches it. Because solitude and companionship are both valuable. And I'm learning to appreciate both. When I return home in September, I'm not the same person who hesitantly boarded that first cruise 9 months ago. That and was afraid and grieving and uncertain about her right to want anything for herself. This and knows exactly what she wants. She wants to travel and explore and experience the world. She wants to be seen and valued as a person, not just as a resource. She wants her children to know her as something more than their mother. She wants to build a life that's hers, genuinely hers, not one that exists only in service to others. And that's exactly what she's building. In October, I hold my first travel-themed dinner party. I invite Linda, Diane, Pauline, Robert, Rebecca and her family, and a few neighbors I've befriended through my book club. I cook food from every country I've visited: Spanish tapas, Italian pasta, Greek salad, French cheese. I tell stories about each place and we flip through photos on my laptop. The kids listen wide-eyed to tales of ancient ruins and beautiful sunsets. My children watch me with new appreciation as they see how engaged I am. How alive. Jessica pulls me aside after dinner. "Grandma, you're like a different person now. In a good way. You're like yourself." "I'm learning to be," I tell her. "And I have you to thank for that. Your comments woke me up." "I still feel bad about that." "Don't," I say. "You gave me the push I needed. Even if you didn't mean to." As November approaches, I'm already planning my next adventure. Portugal in the spring. Japan in the summer. A trip through Southeast Asia in the fall. I'm creating a life so full of experiences that there's no room for regret or resentment. There's no room for making myself small or invisible. If you're thinking about taking that dream trip but feel like you can't, like you should be doing something else or being someone else, I hope you'll subscribe to follow more stories like mine. Stories of women discovering that it's never too late to live for yourself. I'm 73 years old. I have more energy and joy and sense of purpose than I did at 50. I'm not waiting for the perfect moment or for someone to give me permission, or for my life to slow down enough to finally take that vacation. I'm living. Really living. And I'm so grateful that I decided not to stay where I belonged, but instead to go where my dreams were calling me. Martin's list is nearly complete now. Paris checked. Rome checked. Athens checked. Barcelona checked. The Greek islands checked. And there are so many new dreams added to the bottom. Dreams that are mine alone. Dreams that I'm actually living instead of just reading about. When people ask me now if I regret my decision, if I regret not being available when my children needed me, if I regret putting myself first, I tell them the absolute truth. I regret not doing it sooner. I regret spending 5 years of my life being useful instead of being alive. I regret waiting for permission to be myself. But I'm not waiting anymore. And every moment of this new life, every beautiful sunrise over a new horizon, every conversation with a stranger in a foreign city, every meal that tastes like adventure, these are the moments that make up a life worth living. And I'm living it.